The Marine Army received a strange signal from the wreck of the Titanic. It was unusual, but they decided to investigate. No one knew where the signal came from or what it meant. Some thought it was just an error. Others believed it could be something important. Either way, they had to find out. A team of trained experts was selected for the mission. A submarine was prepared with advanced equipment, cameras, and a strong communication system. At exactly 7 a.m., the submarine started to dive into the deep ocean. The team inside was calm and focused. They checked their equipment and followed the signal carefully. The ocean was dark, but their lights helped them see. Fish swam past, and strange deep-sea creatures moved in the shadows. The crew watched the radar and sonar, making sure they were on the right path. Everything seemed normal at first. The submarine moved smoothly and the team stayed alert. As they got deeper, the pressure increased. The ocean floor was full of rocks and old shipwrecks. They were nearing the Titanic's wreck, but something felt strange. The signal was leading them to an oceanic cave, not the Titanic itself. The cave was deep, dark, and surrounded by large rocks. The entrance was narrow, but the signal was coming from inside. Luka Jokic, the leader of the mission, made the decision to enter. The submarine moved slowly through the cave's entrance. Suddenly, the submarine shook. The crew held onto their seats. The submarine had gotten stuck between large stones inside the cave. The team checked the controls and tried to move, but the submarine would not budge. Luka remained calm. He knew they had to act fast. If they stayed stuck for too long, they would run out of oxygen. The pressure outside was strong, and being trapped in a cave made things worse. The team tried using full power to move. The engines roared, and the submarine vibrated, but nothing worked. They checked the cameras. The rocks had trapped them from the sides, and moving forward or backward seemed impossible. One of the crew members suggested trying the robotic arms to push away the rocks. They controlled the arms carefully and pushed against the stones. But the rocks were too heavy. The submarine remained trapped. Luka knew they needed a different plan. He ordered one of his crew members to put on a diving suit and enter the cave. The goal was to find out what was blocking them and clear the way. The crew member followed orders, putting on his diving gear and checking his oxygen levels. He grabbed a flashlight and a small cutting tool in case he needed it. The rest of the team monitored his movement from the submarine's cameras. The diver slowly left the submarine and swam into the cave. His flashlight cut through the darkness. The water was cold and the cave walls were covered in strange plants. He moved forward carefully, looking for the rocks that were blocking the submarine. The team inside watched his progress. Everything seemed fine at first. The diver swam deeper, checking the surroundings. Minutes passed. The radio was silent. Luka called out to the diver, but there was no response. The crew inside grew worried. They checked the cameras, but the diver was gone. He had disappeared into the cave. The team inside the submarine waited, hoping to hear something, but the radio remained silent. Minutes passed. Luka called again, but there was no response. Something was wrong. Luka knew he had to act quickly. He decided to send another crew member to check. The second diver put on his gear, grabbed a flashlight, and entered the cave. The team watched the monitor, following his movement. At first, everything seemed fine. He swam forward, looking for the first diver. Then, the same thing happened. The radio cut off. The second diver vanished into the darkness. Luka's hands tightened. 2 of his men were missing. He could not understand why. The cave was deep, but they had trained for such missions. Luka had no choice but to send another crew member. The third diver suited up and entered the water. The team inside watched the camera. The diver moved carefully, checking the area. The radio was working for a while. Then, silence. The third diver was gone. Luka's chest tightened. His crew was disappearing one by one. He sent a 4th diver, then a 5th. Both of them vanished just like the others. There was no sign of struggle, no warning, just silence. Now, Luca and the last remaining crew member were alone in the submarine. Fear crept into their minds. Luca had to make a decision. He could not leave his team behind. But there was another problem. The submarine was still stuck, and the army was out of reach. The communication system was down. There was no way to call for help. The submarine was trapped inside the cave, and the deep ocean surrounded them. Luca knew they were alone. He turned to his last crew member. "Stay here," he said. "If I don't come back, try to free the submarine." The crew member nodded, but he looked scared. Luca put on his diving suit. He grabbed a flashlight and checked his oxygen tank. Everything was ready. He looked at the dark cave entrance. He knew something strange was happening, but he had no choice. He had to find his team and uncover the truth. Before going in, he took a deep breath. His mind was filled with questions. What happened to his crew? Was there something inside the cave? Was it safe to go in? He had no answers, but he could not leave them behind. Luca turned on his flashlight and entered the cave. Luca carefully swam into the cave. The water was cold and silent. His flashlight barely lit the way. The walls of the cave were rough, covered in strange plants and coral. Small fish darted past him, disappearing into the darkness. As he moved deeper, his heart raced. The silence felt heavy. Then his flashlight revealed something ahead. He froze. His crew was floating in the water, motionless. Their bodies did not move, and their eyes were closed. They showed no signs of injury, but they were lifeless. Luca's chest tightened. Fear and anger filled his mind. What had happened to them? Who or what had done this? He looked around, gripping his flashlight tightly. The cave was dark, but he knew he was not alone. He had to find an answer. The silence in the cave was unsettling. Luca's breathing sounded loud in his helmet. He checked his oxygen levels. Everything was normal, but something was wrong. He could feel it. Then, suddenly, a soft melody echoed through the water. The sound was beautiful, yet strange. It was unlike anything he had heard before. It felt almost unreal, as if the music itself was alive. Luca turned quickly, searching for the source. His flashlight flickered as he moved it around. Then, in the shadows, he saw her. A woman with long, flowing hair and shining scales stared at him. Her skin shimmered under the water. Her eyes were deep and glowing. She did not move, but her presence filled the cave. Luca's breath caught. He had heard stories about this creature before. It was a mermaid. Legends said that mermaids could enchant and harm young men. They lured them with their songs, trapping them forever in the ocean. He had never believed in such myths. He thought they were just old stories. But now he was facing one with his own eyes. The mermaid continued to sing. The melody grew stronger, wrapping around him like a net. Luca felt a strange pull toward the song. It was soft and calming, but something inside him warned him to resist. His heart pounded. He clenched his fists, forcing himself to focus. He looked at his crew again. They had been trapped by the same melody. It had taken them one by one. If he let the song take over, he would be next. Luca had to act fast before it was too late. Luca forced himself to focus. He remembered what the stories said. Mermaids could only harm young men under 30. He was 32. That meant she could not hurt him like she did the others, but he did not know if she had other tricks. He gripped his flashlight and moved closer. The mermaid did not attack. Instead, she watched him with curious eyes. The melody grew louder, filling the cave. Luca felt its power. It was meant to lure him in, just like it did to his crew. He clenched his fists and resisted. He had to find a way to break her spell. He slowly reached for his oxygen tank and removed a small knife attached to his belt. If she tried anything, he was ready. The mermaid tilted her head, as if studying him. She was different from the creatures of the ocean. She was neither fish nor human. Luca had to decide, Should he attack or try to communicate? He took a deep breath and raised his hand, signaling that he meant no harm. The mermaid blinked and stopped singing. Luca had her attention. But what would she do next? The cave grew silent. Luca stared at the mermaid, waiting for her next move. Slowly, she swam closer, watching him carefully. Luca did not move. He needed answers. The mermaid pointed to something behind her. Luca hesitated, but then followed her gaze. There was an old chest buried in the cave floor. It was covered in coral and seaweed. Luca swam closer and brushed off the debris. The chest had strange markings, symbols he had never seen before. His heart pounded. Was this why the mermaid was here? Was she protecting something? Luca had many questions. But before he could think further, the mermaid swam past him. She grabbed his wrist and pulled him toward the exit. Luca resisted at first, but then he understood. She was leading him out. As they reached the submarine, Luca turned back. The mermaid gave him one last look before disappearing into the dark waters. Luca climbed back inside and removed his gear. His crew was gone, and he had no proof of what happened. But he knew one thing for sure. Mermaids were real, and their secrets were still hidden in the deep.